Russia is a land where the sheer magnitude of the earth meets a silence that has been carefully engineered for centuries. It is a vast expanse where secrets are not just kept, but are woven into the very fabric of the landscape, leaving even the most seasoned observers in a state of quiet contemplation. For those of us who remember the height of the Cold War, Russia was always the giant on the other side of the globe, a silhouette of mystery that we watched through a lens of suspicion and strategic calculation. Today, we embark on a journey that will reveal what lies beneath that silence, and why this nation has mastered the art of hiding its true self in plain sight. Consider the sheer math of the place. Russia spans 11 time zones and covers 1/8 of the inhabited land on our planet. To put that in perspective for an American audience, if you were to board a train in the west and head toward the rising sun, you would travel for nearly 7 days and nights before you reached the Pacific Ocean. You would pass through vast stretches of wilderness where the silence is so heavy, it feels like a physical weight. During the era of the space race and the Cuban Missile Crisis, we were taught to look at the Soviet Union as a monolithic block of red on the map. But that map was often a carefully constructed illusion. In Russia, silence is often a strategic choice known as maskirovka. This is the ancient and modern art of deception, of making things appear as they are not, and making sure the most important truths remain invisible to the naked eye. For decades, while we watched grainy satellite footage in Washington and wondered what was happening behind the Iron Curtain, the Kremlin was perfecting the craft of hiding entire cities in the shadows of the Siberian forest. Maskirovka is not just a military doctrine, it is a national identity. It is the reason why the most important industrial centers and research facilities were built in locations so remote that even the most advanced cameras of the 1970s could not find them. We see the visible Moscow with its grand Stalinist architecture and the colorful domes of St. Basil Cathedral, which look like something out of a storybook. But this is the stage set. It is the curated image designed for the foreign eye. The real Russia, the one that hides its secrets, lies far beyond the reach of the tourist buses and the neon lights of the capital city. It is found in the closed cities that were scrubbed from every atlas, and in the deep subterranean complexes built to withstand a nuclear winter that we all once thought was inevitable. For a man who lived through the tense standoff of the 1960s and 70s, the reality of what we know now compared to what we were told then is staggering. We are finding out through declassified files and modern exploration that the bear we watched so closely was often hiding its greatest strengths and its most glaring vulnerabilities in places we never thought to look. In the small villages scattered throughout the wilderness, life is a constant battle with the elements. Here, secrecy is not just a government mandate, but a survival habit. People learned early on that the less the outside world knew about their lives, the safer they were. This culture of discretion, combined with the sheer impossibility of the terrain, created the perfect environment for a nation that wanted to keep its business to itself. From the way they start their trucks in the Siberian winter to the way they built their secret subway lines deep beneath the bedrock, every detail reflects a mindset of resilience and concealment. This is the story of a land that refused to be mapped and a people who found strength in the shadows. As we look at these 11 time zones, we are not just looking at geography, we are looking at a fortress of time and distance. For the next hour, we are going to look at the hidden reality of the world's largest nation and discover why even today, in an age of constant surveillance, Russia remains the land that hides its secrets best. Russia is a land where the earth opens up into a darkness that even modern science struggles to fully map. For those of us who grew up studying the Great Lakes of North America, we think we understand the power of inland water. We look at Lake Superior and we see a vast, formidable sea that can sink a freighter. But in the heart of Siberia, there is a body of water that makes every other lake on the planet look like a shallow pond. This is Lake Baikal. It is the oldest, deepest, and most mysterious lake on Earth. For a man who appreciates the raw physics of the natural world, Baikal is not just a destination, it is a geological anomaly that holds secrets dating back 25 million years. It is a place where the scale of nature meets the silence of the abyss. To understand Baikal, you have to look at the staggering math of its volume. This single lake contains 20% of all the unfrozen fresh water on the surface of our planet. To put that in perspective for an American audience, if you took all 5 of our Great Lakes and poured them into the Baikal Basin, they would barely fill the volume. It reaches a depth of 5,387 feet. That is more than a mile straight down into the crust of the Earth. The water is so pure and so clear that in the winter you can look through the black ice and see rocks and fish 50 feet below you, as if there were nothing there at all. This clarity is not just a natural wonder, it is a technical necessity for some of the most advanced and secretive scientific research in the world. If you were to travel to the southern shores of the lake in the dead of winter, you would see teams of engineers and physicists working on the frozen surface. They are not there for the view. They are tending to the Baikal Neutrino Observatory. For those of us who spent our lives working with machinery or technology, the concept of this place is fascinating. Neutrinos are subatomic particles that travel through the entire Earth without stopping. They are nearly impossible to detect because they have almost no mass. But when they pass through the incredibly pure and deep water of Baikal, they occasionally produce a tiny flash of blue light. By sinking massive strings of optical sensors miles deep into the darkness, the Russians have turned the lake into a giant telescope that looks through the Earth to see the edges of the universe. It is a masterpiece of deep water engineering, using the silence of the abyss to listen to the stars. The logistics of maintaining these sensors in freezing water under 2 meters of ice is a testament to the rugged persistence of the Russian scientific community. But the secrets of Baikal are not just mathematical, they are biological. This lake is an isolated world that has evolved in total separation from the rest of the planet. 80% of the species here exist nowhere else on Earth. The most famous resident is the nerpa, which is the only species of freshwater seal in existence. For a man who values the logic of biology, the nerpa is a puzzling contradiction. Their nearest relatives live in the Arctic Ocean, thousands of miles to the north. How a population of saltwater seals traveled across thousands of miles of land and adapted to a life in a landlocked Siberian lake remains one of the great mysteries of natural history. They have evolved specialized traits to survive here, including the ability to dive to incredible depths and stay underwater for nearly an hour. They are the silent sentinels of the abyss, and their presence suggests that Baikal is more like an inland sea than a simple lake. As with everything in Russia, the deeper you go, the more the silence begins to hide things that defy conventional explanation. During the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Navy conducted secret operations in these waters, and the reports that have trickled out are unsettling. In 1982, a group of military divers reported encountering humanoid figures nearly 10 feet tall at a depth of 50 meters. These divers were not amateurs. They were highly trained professionals, and the incident led to a frantic and classified investigation. For those of us who remember the strange reports of UFO sightings during the 1960s and 70s, these stories carry a weight of intrigue. There are accounts of glowing spheres rising from the depths and technical malfunctions that occur whenever the military tries to map certain deep water sectors. The local people have long believed the lake is a living entity, a sovereign force that demands respect. They do not call it a lake, they call it the sea, and they tell stories of a golden palace hidden at the very bottom, where the time moves differently. Lake Baikal is a place where the distance between the known and the unknown is very thin. It is a massive reservoir of life and a high-tech laboratory hidden in a frozen wilderness. For the American observer, it represents the ultimate expression of the Russian landscape, rugged, deep, and filled with secrets that are guarded by a mile of water and ice. As we look at this ancient abyss, we see a reflection of a nation that has always found its greatest power in the places where others fear to go. It is a land that does not give up its mysteries easily, and as long as the ice holds and the sensors remain in the dark, Baikal will continue to be a silent witness to the history of the Earth, and perhaps things from beyond it. It is the final frontier of the Siberian heartland, where the water is as cold as the history, and the secrets are as deep as the Earth itself. Russia is not a country built on convenience, but on the raw defiance of geography. For a man who appreciates the weight of steel and the grit of real engineering, there is no greater monument to human will than the Trans-Siberian Railway. It is the longest railway line in the world, stretching nearly 6,000 miles from the Grand Terminal in Moscow to the industrial docks of Vladivostok on the Pacific coast. To build it meant conquering a landscape that was never meant to be tamed. During the late 19th century, while Americans were completing our own transcontinental railroad, the Russian Empire was dawning on a project that would dwarf it in scale and hardship. This was not just a matter of laying tracks. It was about bridging two continents across some of the most unforgiving terrain on the planet. One of the first things any American railroader would notice about this system is the track itself. In the United States, we have long relied on the standard gauge of 4 feet 8.5 inches. But when you cross the border into Russia, you encounter a broader gauge of 1,520 millimeters. This choice was not a mistake or a quirk of measurement. It was a calculated strategic decision. In the mid-1800s, Russian engineers and military planners recognized that a wider track would act as a massive logistical hurdle for any invading army. During the height of the 19th century and well into the 20th, any invader coming from the west would find their own trains and rolling stock completely useless at the Russian border. Every soldier, every tank, and every crate of supplies would have to be physically offloaded and moved onto Russian trains. This created a topographical fortress of steel that still dictates how freight moves across the vast expanse of Eurasia today. It is a technical barrier that forced the world to adapt to Russia, rather than the other way around. The bridges that carry these heavy trains across the great Siberian rivers are feats of engineering that seem almost impossible when you consider the conditions. Imagine trying to span the Yenisei or the Obi rivers when the ground beneath your feet is permanent permafrost. In the winter, the earth is as hard as granite, but in the brief and intense Siberian summer, the top layer thaws into a treacherous and shifting muck. You cannot simply pour a concrete footer and expect it to stay put. Russian engineers had to innovate specialized techniques for sinking massive foundations deep into the frozen earth, using steam to melt the ground before driving heavy piles into the permafrost that would then freeze solid again, essentially anchoring the bridge into the very ice of the earth. They built steel giants that could withstand the unimaginable crushing force of ice flows during the spring thaw, when the rivers rise with a violence that would snap a lesser structure like a dry twig. For a man who understands the math of load-bearing and the physics of thermal expansion, the survival of these bridges for over a century is a testament to a very rugged kind of genius. But as impressive as the railway is, there is another path further east that tells an even more harrowing story of engineering and human endurance. This is the Kolyma Highway, known to history and the locals as the Road of Bones. It is a 2,000-mile artery that cuts through the most desolate reaches of the Russian Far East, connecting the port of Magadan to the rest of the country. This road was not built with modern machinery, but by the hands of hundreds of thousands of prisoners during the Stalinist era. The technical challenge of building a year-round highway in a region where temperatures regularly drop to 70 degrees below zero is a nightmare. The entire region sits on top of deep permafrost. If you were to pave it with traditional American asphalt, the heat from the sun and the friction of heavy truck tires would melt the ice directly beneath the surface, causing the road to collapse into a series of impassable craters and sinkholes. To solve this, the engineers used a specific mixture of local gravel and clay that allows the ground to breathe and flex without breaking the surface. However, this means the road requires constant and grueling maintenance. The name Road of Bones comes from a grim reality that we in the West rarely talk about. During the frantic construction of the 1930s and 40s, the ground was often too frozen to dig proper graves for the prisoners who succumbed to the cold and exhaustion. Instead, their remains were incorporated directly into the roadbed. For those of us who grew up watching the smooth progress of the interstate highway system under President Eisenhower, the idea of a major highway built on a foundation of human cost and frozen mud is difficult to grasp. The Kolyma Highway is a place where there are no gas stations for hundreds of miles, and where a simple mechanical breakdown in the dead of winter is not an inconvenience, but a likely death sentence. Drivers in this region have a unique set of habits born of necessity. They often travel in convoys, and they never turn their engines off for days at a time, because once a diesel engine freezes in the Siberian night, it may not start again until the following June. The engineering here is not about luxury or efficiency. It is about the sheer stubborn refusal to let the wilderness win. Whether it is the 1,520mm gauge of the Trans-Siberian Railway or the gravel foundations of the Road of Bones, the message is the same. Russia is a land where the earth itself is the primary adversary, and where every mile of progress was bought with a level of technical grit and human hardship that demands a quiet respect from anyone who has ever picked up a tool or designed a structure. It is a landscape that hides its secrets under layers of ice and steel, and to understand it, you have to look past the map and see the raw power of the engineering that holds it all together. To understand the true nature of Siberia, you have to stop thinking of cold as a weather condition and start thinking of it as a physical wall that stands between you and your survival. For those of us who have spent winters in places like Montana or North Dakota, we think we know what a hard freeze looks like. We know the sound of a battery clicking and the feel of a door handle sticking to our palm. But in places like Yakutsk and Oymyakon, the cold is an entirely different animal. This is the realm of the pole of cold, where temperatures regularly plunge to 60 or 70 degrees below zero. In this environment, the very laws of physics seem to change. Steel becomes as brittle as glass. Rubber tires square off and lose their roundness. Even the breath that leaves your lungs turns into a tinkling frost that the locals call the whisper of the stars. This is not a place for the faint of heart, and for a man who values practical knowledge, the way these people live is a masterclass in rugged ingenuity. If you are a gearhead who takes pride in maintaining your equipment, the logistics of operating a vehicle in Yakutsk will fascinate you. In a standard American winter, we might plug in a block heater and hope for the best. In Siberia, hope is not a strategy. From October until April, many drivers in the Far East simply never turn their engines off. If you go to a grocery store or a doctor appointment, you leave the truck idling in the parking lot. If you go home for the night, the engine stays running. The reason is a matter of simple chemistry and mechanical reality. At minus 50 degrees, engine oil takes on the consistency of thick molasses, and batteries lose nearly all of their cranking power. If that engine blocks, stops generating heat, The seals will shrink, and the fluids will freeze solid within an hour. Restarting a cold, dead engine in these conditions requires hours of work with blowtorches and insulated blankets. So the trucks rumble through the night, 1,000 exhaust pipes, sending plumes of white steam into the dark Arctic air. It is a massive expenditure of fuel, but it is the price of mobility. To turn the key to the off position is to surrender your vehicle to the ice until the following May. The ground itself is perhaps the greatest adversary in this region. We are talking about permafrost, a layer of earth that has remained frozen for thousands of years. In some parts of Siberia, this frozen crust extends nearly 5,000 feet down into the bedrock. For a builder or a civil engineer, permafrost is a nightmare because it acts like a slow-motion liquid. If you build a house directly on the ground, the heat from the foundation will eventually melt the ice beneath it, causing the structure to tilt and sink into a self-made swamp. This is why you see apartment blocks in Yakutsk, built on massive concrete stilts, driven deep into the earth. It allows the frigid air to circulate under the building, keeping the ground frozen and stable. But the most sobering example of the struggle against permafrost is found in the simple act of burial. Even death in the Far East requires a level of engineering patience that is difficult for us to imagine. When someone passes away in the dead of winter, you cannot simply bring in a backhoe and dig a grave. The ground is as hard as armor plating. To open a single plot, the workers must first light a massive bonfire of coal and wood on the surface. They let it burn for several hours to thaw the first few inches of soil. Once the fire dies down, they scrape away the softened mud and repeat the process. They light another fire, dig another few inches, and continue this cycle for 2 or 3 days until the hole is deep enough. It is a slow and smoky ritual, a final battle with the Siberian earth that demands a quiet respect. It reminds us that in this land nothing is given for free, not even a place of rest. In the midst of this brutal environment, the Russian banya emerges not as a luxury or a spa treatment, but as a vital piece of survival hardware. For a man living in a Siberian outpost, the banya is where he resets his internal thermostat. This is a traditional steam room, built of thick logs, where the heat is generated by throwing water over scorching river stones. But it is more than just a place to get warm. When you have spent the day working in the biting wind, your circulation begins to retreat to your core. Your joints stiffen, and the deep chill settles into your bone marrow. The banya uses intense heat and high humidity to force the blood back to the surface of the skin. The practice of beating the body with bunches of dried birch or oak branches known as a venik is not a form of punishment, it is a technical necessity. It stimulates the capillaries and opens the pores to flush out the toxins that accumulate during a winter of heavy clothing and limited hygiene. The final step is often the most shocking, where the bather runs out of the steam room and plunges into a hole in the ice or rolls in the fresh snow. This thermal shock is a brutal but effective way to strengthen the cardiovascular system and keep the body resilient against the extreme fluctuations of the climate. For the older generation of Siberians, the banya is the reason they are still standing. It is a ritual of steeling the body and the mind against an environment that wants to shut you down. Life at 60 below zero is a constant negotiation with the elements. It requires a mindset of stoicism and a deep understanding of the materials around you. From the way they insulate their windows with triple panes and specialized putty, to the way they wear heavy layers of reindeer fur and felt boots, the people of the Russian North have turned survival into an art form. They do not complain about the weather because the weather is a constant. Instead, they focus on the mechanics of staying alive, and the small comforts that keep the spirit intact. As we look at these Siberian outposts, we see a reflection of a very old and very rugged human spirit. It is a reminder that while modern technology can provide a buffer, it is ultimately the grit of the individual and the wisdom of the community that allows life to flourish in the coldest corners of the earth. These are the habits of a people who have looked into the white silence of the Arctic and refused to blink. During the tense decades of the Cold War, we spent our time looking at maps of the Soviet Union, trying to understand the nature of the adversary. We saw the dots for Kiev and Leningrad, and we saw the vast, empty stretches of the Siberian taiga. But what we did not know, and what the maps were designed to hide, was that entire cities were missing. These were not small outposts or temporary military camps. They were fully functioning urban centers with populations reaching over 100,000 people. They were known as closed administrative territorial formations, or by the Russian acronym ZATO. For a man who grew up in the shadow of the Iron Curtain, the existence of these places is a reminder that in Russia, the state has always prioritized the secret over the map. These cities were scrubbed from every atlas and removed from every train schedule. They did not have names in the traditional sense. Instead, they were referred to by a city name and a number which represented a postal code connected to a major hub hundreds of miles away. Places like Arzamas 16 or Chelyabinsk 65 were ghost names for very real places where the most sensitive work of the empire was conducted. The technical deception involved in maintaining these cities was massive. Until the early 1990s, a pilot flying a civilian aircraft over the Russian heartland would look down at a sprawling industrial complex and a grid of apartment blocks, only to find that his charts showed nothing but empty forest or swamp. This was not an accident, but a deliberate policy of geographic erasure. The logistics of keeping a city of 80,000 people invisible required a level of control that is difficult for us in the West to wrap our heads around. Every Zato was surrounded by a double perimeter of high-tension fencing and barbed wire. These were not just gates, but hardened checkpoints manned by elite internal troops who were tasked with ensuring that not a single unauthorized soul entered or exited. To live in a Zato meant your life was defined by the fence. Your internal passport was stamped with a special code that allowed you passage, but it also marked you as a permanent resident of a secret world. Let us look at Sarov, once known to the world of intelligence as Arzamas 16. This city was the birthplace of the Soviet atomic bomb and remains the heart of their nuclear research today. Imagine an entire city that is essentially a high-security laboratory. The finest physicists and engineers were brought here and told they could never leave without a direct order. In the early days, even writing a letter to a relative outside the fence was a risk that could lead to an interrogation. The mail was heavily censored and routed through Moscow to ensure no one could triangulate the city's true coordinates. Today, Sarov is still closed, and the fence remains. It is a place where the history of the Cold War is not something in a museum, but a daily reality of guarded gates and non-disclosure agreements. Then there is Severomorsk, situated on the frozen coast of the Barents Sea. This is the nerve center for the Russian Northern Fleet. While we watched their submarines on our sonar screens, the people of Severomorsk were living in a city of gray concrete and freezing salt air. The technical challenge of maintaining a major naval base and a civilian population in such an inhospitable and secret location is a testament to Russian engineering and endurance. The city exists solely to service the fleet, and every resident from the baker to the dock worker is vetted by the security services. For the men who served on our own destroyers or submarines during those years, the idea of a secret naval city was a constant tactical puzzle. We knew they were out there, but Severomorsk was a ghost on the shoreline. You might find yourself wondering why any sane person would agree to live in a gilded cage. For the Russian citizen during the Soviet era, the Zato was actually a highly desirable destination. It was the great paradox of their system. In a country where breadlines were common and basic goods were a luxury, the closed cities were a land of plenty. The shops in Sarov and Severomorsk were always stocked with fresh meat and imported goods that the average citizen in Moscow could only dream of. The pay was significantly higher, and the crime rate was virtually zero because everyone inside the wire was screened. The schools were the best in the nation, and the sense of community was incredibly strong. The trade-off was simple. You gave up your freedom of movement and your geographic identity in exchange for a high quality of life and absolute security. You could walk the streets at midnight without a worry, but you could not invite your own brother to visit for your daughter wedding without months of background checks and government permits. Even after the fall of the Soviet Union, dozens of these cities voted to remain closed. They feared that opening the gates would bring in the crime and chaos of the outside world. Today, there are roughly 44 acknowledged closed cities in Russia, with an estimated population of over 1.5 million people. These are people who live in a parallel reality, where the map still lies. For those of us who appreciate the order and discipline of a well-run society, there is a strange fascination in the Zato system. It represents a way of living that is entirely alien to our experience of open roads and public maps. It is a world where the boundary between the citizen and the state is marked by electrified wire, and where the most important places on Earth are the ones you are not allowed to see. As we look at these cities that technically do not exist, we begin to understand the true depth of the silence that Russia has maintained for generations. It is not just about hiding a bomb or a submarine. It is about a culture that finds its greatest strength in being invisible. For a man who spent his career or his youth watching the horizon during the Cold War, there was always a sense that the Soviet Union was building things that defied conventional logic. We sat in our living rooms in Ohio or Texas watching the evening news, and we wondered what kind of hardware was being tested in the secret waters of the East. One of the most chilling and fascinating examples of this was discovered by a CIA satellite in 1966. It was a grainy black and white image of a giant object moving across the Caspian Sea at speeds that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. Our intelligence analysts called it the Caspian Sea Monster. They had never seen anything like it. It was hundreds of feet long with stubby wings and 8 massive jet engines mounted right behind the cockpit. It looked like a fever dream of a mad engineer. This was the Ekranoplan, and it represented a radical departure from everything we understood about naval warfare. It operated on a principle of physics known as ground effect. When a wing flies very close to a flat surface like the ocean, it creates a cushion of air that increases lift and reduces drag significantly. The Russians did not just study this principle, they weaponized it with an uncompromising focus. They built the MD-160, which was the Lund-class Ekranoplan. This was not a plane that could dogfight, and it was not a ship that would sit in the waves. It was a high-speed missile platform that hovered just 15 feet above the water. It could carry 6 supersonic Sunburn missiles capable of sinking an American aircraft carrier before our radar even knew it was there. Because it flew so low, it was invisible to long-range radar systems, and because it did not actually touch the water, it was completely immune to torpedoes and sea mines. To get this 400-ton beast into the air, the Russians used sheer brute force and technical ingenuity. The nose of the craft was fitted with 8 Kuznetsov NK-87 turbofans. These are the same kind of massive engines you would expect to see on a long-range heavy bomber. Each engine produced over 28,000 pounds of thrust. The sound of all 8 firing at once across the desolate Caspian must have been deafening and terrifying. It was a masterpiece of Cold War engineering designed to strike fast and vanish into the mist. It could travel at over 300 miles per hour, crossing the entire sea in a fraction of the time it would take a standard destroyer. For those of us who appreciate the math of aerodynamics and the power of heavy machinery, the Ekranoplan remains one of the most impressive, if not frightening, technical achievements of that era. But as the Soviet Union began to crumble, the funding for these monsters dried up. Today, the last remaining Lund-class Ekranoplan sits abandoned on a beach in Dagestan. It is a haunting sight to see a machine that was once the greatest secret of the Soviet Navy now being reclaimed by the salt air and the sand. This pattern of high-tech ambition, followed by silence and decay, is even more evident when we look at their space program. In the 1980s, we were proud of our space shuttle fleet. We saw the Discovery and the Challenger as the pinnacle of human achievement and a symbol of American ingenuity. But behind the Iron Curtain, the Russians were building their own version called the Buran. From the outside, it looked like a carbon copy of our shuttle, which led many to believe it was just a product of industrial espionage. However, when you look at the technical specs, the Buran was in many ways more sophisticated than our own orbiter. While our shuttles required a human pilot to land, the Buran was designed from the ground up to fly and land entirely by computer. In 1988, it completed its only flight without a single person on board, navigating back to the runway in the middle of a Kazakh winter with incredible precision. It was an engineering triumph that should have changed the future of space travel. The Buran used the Energia rocket, which was the most powerful launch vehicle ever built by the Soviets, and it did not have the dangerous solid rocket boosters that we relied on. It was a cleaner and more powerful design. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Buran was tucked away in a giant hangar at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. In 2002, the roof of that hangar collapsed after years of neglect, destroying the only shuttle that had ever flown. Today, if you were to sneak into the abandoned hangars of Siberia or the Kazakh steppe, you would find 2 other Buran prototypes just sitting there covered in decades of dust and bird droppings. They are relics of a time when the world was divided and the race for technical superiority pushed engineers to the absolute limit. For an American observer who lived through the space race, there is a strange mix of emotions looking at these abandoned giants. There is a deep respect for the engineering skill it took to build them, and a sobering reminder of how quickly a superpower's secrets can turn into scrap metal. These machines were meant to conquer the seas and the stars, but instead, they have become part of the silence that Russia keeps so well. They are reminders that while we were focused on the visible threat, the most impressive achievements were often hidden in plain sight, waiting for a future that never arrived. As we look at these rusted hulls, we see the shadow of an empire that was willing to engineer the impossible, only to let it rot in the dark. If you have ever seen photos of the Moscow metro, you probably noticed the crystal chandeliers and the marble walls that look more like a palace than a subway station. It is a stunning display of Soviet pride and public engineering meant to be seen by millions of people every day. But for the man who understands how a fortress is built, the real interest lies in what is not on the public maps. Beneath the deepest escalators of the public system, there is a rumored second network, a shadow labyrinth known to the Russian security services as D6. This is Metro 2. It was not built for the people, but for the survival of the state. It represents a level of subterranean planning that goes far beyond anything we have ever attempted in the West. For a generation that grew up wondering what was happening behind the Iron Curtain, the mystery of these tunnels is a reminder that the Soviets were always preparing for the worst-case scenario. Metro 2 is a deep-level subterranean railway system that bypasses the public lines entirely. While the public metro reaches depths of 80 or 90 meters, Metro 2 is whispered to run as deep as 200 meters into the solid bedrock of the city. For a technical observer, the construction of such a system is a staggering feat of civil engineering. It involves single-track tunnels and specialized rolling stock designed to whisk the Russian leadership from the Kremlin to secret bunkers on the outskirts of the city in the event of a nuclear strike. During the height of the Cold War, while we in the United States were building backyard shelters and civil defense sirens, the Soviet leadership was carving out a literal underground kingdom. These tunnels are not just for trains. They are equipped with advanced life support systems and air filtration units that can handle radioactive fallout and massive steel blast doors that can seal off the corridors in seconds. The tracks themselves are often laid without third rail power, instead using battery-powered locomotives or specialized diesel engines to ensure that even if the city power grid is destroyed, the government remains mobile. These secret trains are rumored to connect the Kremlin directly to the airport at Vnukovo and a massive underground bunker city located at Ramenki. This underground city is said to be capable of housing 30,000 people for several months. It is a testament to the mindset of a nation that viewed geography not just as something to live on, but something to hide within. For an engineer, the challenge of maintaining such a massive secret structure in the middle of a bustling metropolis is mind-boggling. It requires thousands of dedicated staff and a logistics chain that operates entirely in the dark. This culture of duality, where a building serves a public purpose and a hidden military one, is best seen in the architecture of the Moscow skyscrapers. They are known as the Seven Sisters, a group of 7 massive towers built in the Stalinist Gothic style. To the average tourist, they are landmarks of beauty, but to a military analyst, they were built as a defensive ring. The spire of the Moscow State University, for example, is not just an architectural flourish. During the Soviet era, it was rumored to house high-frequency radar equipment and communication arrays that could track incoming threats or broadcast emergency orders during a total blackout. The foundations of these towers are built into the same bedrock that houses the secret tunnels. They are the visible anchors of an invisible defensive shield. For those of us who spent years looking at satellite imagery of the Soviet Union, these towers were symbols of a regime that saw every block of granite as a tactical asset. The history of this underground obsession dates back to 1941, when the German army was nearly at the gates of Moscow. Stalin famously refused to leave the city, but he did not leave his survival to chance. He ordered the construction of a massive bunker complex directly beneath the Kremlin. This was not a simple basement. It was a subterranean city with command centers, living quarters, and a direct connection to the early subway lines. It was here that the orders were given that eventually turned the tide of the Second World War. The existence of these deep-level command posts set the precedent for the massive expansions during the nuclear age. During the war, the metro stations themselves were used as air raid shelters for the civilian population, but Stalin Command Center was a different world entirely. It was finished with polished wood and fine carpets, even as the city above was being bombarded. Today, the rumors of a city beneath a city continue to intrigue those of us who appreciate the secret history of the great powers. There are independent explorers in Moscow known as diggers who spend their lives trying to find the entrances to these hidden tunnels. They look for unmarked ventilation shafts and massive power substations that feed no visible buildings. Occasionally, they find a rusted manhole cover that leads down into a world of concrete and silence that has waited for a war that fortunately never came. The Russian state has never officially confirmed the existence of Metro 2, but the evidence is written in the geography of the city itself. For the retired engineer or the armchair historian, the Moscow Underground is a reminder that the most important parts of a machine are often the ones you cannot see. As we look at the grand architecture of the surface, we must always remember the dark steel and cold stone that lies beneath. It is a land that keeps its secrets deep, and it shows us that in the heart of Russia, even the ground you walk on has a second life. This hidden infrastructure is a relic of a time when the world was on a knife edge, and it remains a part of the bare, long shadow. Whether you believe every rumor or not, the sheer scale of the known underground facilities is enough to command respect. It is a reminder that while the surface world changes and modernizes, the bedrock beneath Moscow remains a fortress of the old world designed to survive the end of the world. As we look at these secret passages, we see the ultimate expression of the Russian desire to remain invisible and impenetrable. It is a landscape of shadows that continues to hide its secrets well into the 21st century. If you want to understand the true power of the bear, you have to look past the military parades and deep into the crust of the earth itself, where Russia hides a fortune that defies the imagination. For those of us who spent our careers in industry or engineering, we know that wealth is not just a number on a screen. It is the physical possession of the raw materials that run the world. Russia is not just a country. It is a subterranean vault containing the largest reserves of natural resources on the planet. From the diamond pipes of Siberia to the gas fields of the Yamal Peninsula, the wealth of this nation is buried in an abyss that is as dangerous as it is profitable. It is an economic engine built on a scale that makes our own domestic operations look like small business. And for a man who appreciates the reality of logistics and heavy industry, the way Russia extracts this wealth is a story of sheer engineering grit. Nowhere is the audacity of Russian extraction more visible than at the Myr mine in eastern Siberia. Imagine standing on the edge of a hole so massive that it creates its own weather patterns. This is an open-pit diamond mine that plunges over 1,700 feet into the permafrost with a diameter of nearly 4,000 feet. It is a staggering crater that is clearly visible from space, but its most terrifying feature is the air currents it generates. Because of the extreme depth and the temperature differential, the mine creates a downward vortex that is powerful enough to suck small helicopters right out of the sky. For a pilot or an engineer, this is a nightmare of aerodynamics. The Russian government eventually had to ban all flights over the hole to prevent more crashes. Inside this abyss, the miners worked in temperatures that would freeze a hydraulic line in minutes, pulling out some of the largest and highest quality diamonds ever found. It was this mine that broke the monopoly of the Western diamond cartels and provided the hard currency the Soviet Union needed to fund its military ambitions during the height of the Cold War. But as impressive as diamonds are, the true lifeblood of the Russian state is the gas and oil that flows through a continent-sized network of steel. To understand their geopolitical leverage, you have to understand Gazprom. In the West, we view a corporation as a private entity, but in Russia, Gazprom is a ministry of energy and a weapon of diplomacy. It is the largest extractor of natural gas in the world, and it uses its pipelines like a grandmaster uses a chess piece. The logistics are mind-boggling. We are talking about pipelines that stretch for thousands of miles, crossing multiple borders and moving through the most hostile swamps and frozen forests on Earth. At any given moment, Russia is producing over 11 million barrels of oil every single day. That is a river of black gold that never stops flowing. They extract over 600 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually, supplying the energy needs of nearly half of Europe. For a man who understands the importance of energy security, the realization that one nation holds the literal kill switch for the heating and industry of an entire continent is sobering. The engineering required to move this volume of gas across 11 time zones is a feat of pure technical endurance. Because the gas must travel thousands of miles under high pressure, the Russians built massive compressor stations that look like military fortresses. These stations use gas turbines that produce tens of thousands of horsepower to push the fuel through 56-inch wide pipes. In the north, these pipes cannot be buried because the heat from the friction would melt the permafrost and cause the line to rupture. Instead, they are carried on massive steel supports that allow the Arctic wind to blow underneath. This is an infrastructure project that has been under construction for 50 years, and it is the only reason the Russian economy remains afloat despite years of international sanctions. However, there is a deep and bitter contrast between this incredible wealth and the life of the average Russian citizen. If you were to walk through a small village in the Siberian interior, you would see people living in log houses with wood stoves, often without indoor plumbing. It is one of the great paradoxes of history that a country sitting on trillions of dollars worth of oil and gas often leaves its own people to chop wood to survive the winter. The wealth of the abyss stays at the top, feeding the ambitions of the state and the bank accounts of the elite. For those of us who believe in the value of hard work and the fair distribution of opportunity, this disparity is difficult to swallow. The Russian worker is perhaps the most resilient individual on Earth because he sees the billions of dollars of equipment moving past his front door, while he continues to live with the same rugged simplicity as his grandfather did in the 1940s. This wealth is the anchor of Russian sovereignty. It is what allows them to act on the world stage with a defiance that often baffles our own leaders. They know that as long as the world needs to keep the lights on and the factories running, they will have a customer. For a man who lived through the oil shocks of the 1970s, the power of this resource cannot be overstated. It is the ultimate leverage. As we look at the sheer volume of barrels and cubic meters, we see a nation that has gambled everything on the riches beneath its feet. They have turned the harshness of Siberia into a source of absolute power. The silence of the abyss is not just a geological feature, it is the sound of a massive industrial heart beating in the dark. As long as the pipes are full and the mines are deep, Russia will continue to be a land that hides its greatest power in the shadows of the earth. It is a fortune built on steel and ice, and for those who know how the world really works, it is the most important secret the bear has ever kept. Russia is a land where the true resilience of the people is not measured by the size of their military parades, but by the depth of the roots in their garden plots. For those of us who value self-reliance and the ability to provide for our own families, there is a profound lesson to be learned in the Russian tradition of the dacha. To a casual observer from the West, a dacha might look like a simple summer cottage or a weekend getaway similar to a cabin in the woods of Michigan or a camp in the Maine wilderness. But in the Russian heartland, the dacha is something far more vital. It is a survival outpost, a strategic reserve, and the cornerstone of a rugged social fabric that has weathered the most brutal storms of the 20th century. To understand the importance of the dacha, you have to look at the sheer scale of the practice. It is estimated that over 60 million Russians, roughly 40% of the entire population, spend their weekends and summers working on these small plots of land. For an American man who takes pride in a well-kept lawn or a backyard vegetable garden, the intensity of the dacha culture is staggering. These are not ornamental gardens filled with exotic flowers. They are functional, high-yield survival plots. The primary crop is the potato, which the Russians call their second bread. Year after year, millions of families spend their days digging in the dark earth, planting enough potatoes, onions, and cabbage to last through a long and unforgiving winter. This is not a hobby or a trend. It is a habit of survival passed down from father to son through generations of scarcity and upheaval. For those of us who remember watching the news in the 1990s, as the Soviet Union collapsed, the images of empty store shelves and economic chaos are still fresh. During those dark years when the ruble was worthless and state salaries went unpaid for months at a time, it was the dacha that saved the country. While the systems of the city were failing, the people turned back to the earth. They relied on the jars of pickled vegetables and the bags of potatoes stored in their root cellars. This experience forged a specific kind of stoicism in the older generation of Russians. They are a people who do not expect the government to solve their problems or the world to be fair. They expect the winter to be hard, and they prepare accordingly. There is a quiet dignity in this level of preparedness. that any man who has lived through a few economic cycles of his own can surely respect. This rugged lifestyle has created a social code that often baffles outsiders. To an American tourist walking down a street in Moscow, the people might seem cold or even hostile. There is a famous unspoken rule in Russian society often called the ban on emotions in public. You will rarely see a stranger smile at you on the sidewalk. In the Russian mindset, a smile without a reason is seen as a sign of a fool or someone who is trying to deceive you. They wear a mask of stone to protect themselves from an unpredictable world. But for a man who knows how to look past the surface, the true secret of the Russian soul is revealed once you cross the threshold of the dacha. Behind closed doors and away from the watchful eyes of the state, the stoic mask disappears. The hospitality you will encounter in a simple Russian home is overwhelming and absolute. If you are invited to a dacha, you are treated as a brother. The table will be covered with the literal fruits of their labor, from homegrown tomatoes to cured meats and the inevitable bottle of vodka. They will give you the best seat in the house and share their stories with a raw honesty that you will never find in a public square. This contrast between the cold exterior and the warm interior is the essence of the Russian social fabric. They do not give their trust easily, but once it is earned, it is a bond of steel. The dacha is more than just a piece of land. It is the place where the Russian man finds his true self. It is where he builds his own fences, repairs his own roof, and reconnects with the traditions of his ancestors. In a world that is becoming increasingly digital and disconnected, the dacha remains a place of physical labor and tangible results. It is a reminder that when the systems of the modern world falter, it is the dirt under your fingernails and the food in your cellar that truly matter. As we look at these small wooden houses scattered across the vast Russian landscape, we see a nation that has mastered the art of survival. They have hidden their greatest strength, not in the halls of power, but in the humble soil of their gardens. It is a quiet, rugged legacy that continues to define the spirit of the bear well into the 21st century. Russia is a land where the echoes of the past never quite fade, and where the future is always built on a foundation of secrecy and steel. As we have traveled across these 11 time zones, from the closed cities of the north to the bottomless depths of Lake Baikal, we have seen a nation that defies every attempt at a simple explanation. For a man who has watched the global stage for many decades, the image of the bear is often one of a monolithic power. But the reality we have uncovered is a landscape of staggering contradictions. It is a place where hypersonic missiles and nuclear submarines are designed in laboratories located just a few miles away from villages where people still draw their water from hand-dug wells and heat their homes with wood stoves that have not changed in 100 years. This duality is the true hallmark of the Russian experience, and it is the reason why the country remains so difficult to map with a Western mind. We see a government that can engineer the most sophisticated subterranean fortresses in the world and extract trillions of dollars in wealth from the frozen earth. Yet, it often leaves its own people to find their own way through the winter, with nothing but their own hands and their own grit. For those of you who lived through the tense standoff of the Cold War, who remember the feeling of watching the nightly news and wondering if the silence would ever break. There is a profound irony in what we know now. The high-tech hardware we feared and the secret cities we tried to search for on our maps were only one part of the story. The real strength of Russia was never just in its silos or its submarines. It was found in the stoicism of the grandmother growing potatoes at her dacha, and the patience of the mechanic who never turns his engine off in the Siberian dark. The greatest secret of this land is not a hidden bunker or a classified weapon. It is the resilience of a people who have been forged by a history of absolute hardship and a geography that shows no mercy. They have learned that the world is unpredictable and that the only thing you can truly rely on is your own ability to endure and protect your family. This is the long shadow that the bear casts across the globe. It is a shadow of defiance, of concealment, and of a quiet survival that demands a certain level of respect, even if we do not always agree with its path. As we close this chapter on the land that hides its secrets, we invite you to look back at your own history and your own place in time. For those of you who served in the military during those long years, or anyone who has ever traveled across these vast and rugged borders, we want to hear from you. What are your personal memories of the Cold War era? And how does the Russia you see today compare to the mystery we all watched from across the ocean? Please share your stories and your travel experiences in the comments below. Your perspective is a vital part of the history we are trying to preserve, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts on the land of the bear.